was Barack Obama and Angela Merkel, who met desperately last Friday trying to figure out how to stave off the collapse of private corporate world government. What a delusional group of elites who actually believed that they could establish a private planetary government, give themselves diplomatic immunity and tax exemption, and then just deny to the public it existed. But last Monday, the New York Times was still trying that. They were out saying that Alex Jones believes in a global government globalism conspiracy. He believes in a thing called globalism. Meanwhile, we have the president and the German chancellor running around saying globalism is in crisis. Global government is in trouble. This is how mainstream media talks to you like you're a 3-year-old. Extreme, extreme arrogance. Now, I've got a lot of news, obviously, to break down here before we open the phones up on this Sunday edition and take your calls. We're here every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I return weekdays, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central. We have InfoWars Nightly News, 7 o'clock Central, weeknights as well. There's been a lot of interesting things unfolding this week. The mainstream media went from saying that we were a tiny show that had no viewers and listeners to admitting that we're bigger than the New York Times and the Washington Post and are rated 126 on the web. That's just our website. They also have begun to recognize that other independent media is much bigger than them. And so it's a real come-to-Jesus moment for these arrogant sycophants, and their response is, and I have the clip coming up, kick Alex Jones off the air. So if that isn't authoritarian, I don't know what is. But before we go there, there's a very interesting article out of the Hollywood Reporter that we've posted up on Infowars.com. And it came out Friday, and Steve Bannon is the head strategist for the Trump White House and good friends with Trump for decades. And, of course, he took over Breitbart in the last few years and has made it very, very nationalistic, very, very anti-New World Order, not just anti-social justice warrior liberal. And if you read this article, it's the spirit of America. People say, why is Steve Bannon reading off the same sheet of music as Alex Jones? Or why is Joseph Farah reading off the same sheet as Alex Jones? Or why is Matt Drudge reading off the same sheet as Alex Jones? It's not like we got some sheet or talking point. This is how the real world works. And we're breaking down the real players and the real political and economic systems. And Americanism is the Renaissance, is free market, is the people making their own decisions, is the lowest tax rates in the world. They keep asking what makes America great again, like Trump hasn't been clear. No taxes for working class people. Having fair trade deals, not letting globalist interests sell out the incredible American dynamo. The United States by the 1950s had something like 80% of world production, totally controlled everything, was spreading freedom worldwide, and then it all stopped, like a needle being pulled off a record, because the globalists came in and said, we want a permanent deep state, we want to degrade America, we want the U.S. to lose wars, we want to then transfer American power into China and set up a system where you have a multipolar world controlled by multinational banks. You can read that in the Council on Foreign Relations bi-monthly publications. You can read the former editor of Newsweek saying it, Strobe Talbot. You can read, when he was Undersecretary of State saying the same thing. There are tens of thousands of quotes and books and letters and art. When I say tens of thousands, that's very conservative. But they know the general public doesn't read intellectual white papers. So they tell you on the Nightly News or the New York Times it does not exist. With Trump, look how far we've come. Almost everyone knows the Federal Reserve is private now, thanks to this show and Ron Paul and others. Almost everyone now knows that foreign banks are tax exempt. All these huge things are happening. And then you read this amazing article. We basically had a blurb article on it that broke down the quotes and that quoted Bannon. Our headline was, Stephen Bannon says, Americans want somebody in office who isn't going to F them over. And he talks about the strategy that got record numbers of black Americans, Hispanic Americans to vote for Trump, and how the numbers show if we can deliver tax cuts and prosperity and break the back of all the sick, race-baiting, brainwashing, desperate establishment moves to mentally cripple this country and turn us into racist basket cases, If we can double down and defeat that, which we're starting to do, their whole system is over. I saw a meme last week that the Democratic Party hasn't been so upset since the Republicans outlawed slavery with the election of Trump. And that's really what we're facing. The establishment had taken over the Republican Party. They had purposely basically been loyal opposition. CIA white papers have been declassified, breaking down that since the late 60s, that's been the case. So with no real opposition, they could make it look like there was no way to ever have change. Now, the media is attacking this article and Steve Bannon saying, oh, Karl Rove claimed he created a permanent Republican supermajority, and Karl Rove said a lot of the stuff. No, he didn't. Karl Rove represented blue blood Bushes that are in league with the Clintons. He represented a guy that could hardly talk, George H. Bush, H.W.'s son. George W. Bush. He represented the old rotting blue blood joke establishment that moved to Texas to look like they had some street cred with commoners. With this, with Bannon and Trump, it's real. They intend to get rid of taxes, $40,000 a year or less. They intend to cut corporate tax to make the jobs move back here. The big corporations wrote that to move the jobs overseas. And you read these quotes, this is pure Americana, because he waited not to give the New York Times, the Washington Post interview, where they've been lying about him with no proof saying he's racist, or because he criticized some Jewish people, he must be anti-Semitic. I mean, give me a break. You get in politics, you're Jewish. He criticizes you for what your policies are. The guy's been pro-Israel, and they flip out on you and attack you. This is why all this race-baiting garbage doesn't work anymore. So he gave this interview with a reporter he's known for a while, Michael Wolff, because he knew he'd actually just get quoted in it. And boy, is this a good article. This is so Americana. I'm going to start reading this now. When asked if he's a white nationalist, he says, quote, he absolutely mockingly starts laughing, rejects the idea that it is a racial line. I'm not a white nationalist. I'm a nationalist. I'm an economic nationalist, he tells me. The globalists gutted the American working class. This guy's came from poor Democrats, by the way. You know, blue-collar steel workers. The globalists gutted the American working class and created a middle class in Asia. The issue now is about Americans looking not to get effed over. If we deliver, I think you heard this before from somebody, if we deliver, by we, he means the Trump White House, we'll get 60% of the white vote, 40% of the black vote, and Hispanic vote, and we'll govern for 50 years. That's what the Democrats missed. They were talking to people with companies with $9 billion market cap employing 9 people. It's not reality. They lost sight of what the world's all about. Community, jobs, industry, pride, quality. In a nation administration that seems at best random in its belief, Bannon can seem but to not just focus voice. He seems to not just be a focused voice, but almost a messianic one. Yes, and he goes on from there with populism, which you've heard here. But it isn't that Bannon and I are reading from the same sheet of music. We're telling you what the American system is. And everyone's acting like it's so sexy, it's so new, it's so alien. It's what made the country great. Globalism was a one-sided screw job on purpose. They wrote books admitting it. Henry Kissinger admits it. David Rockefeller wrote 2 books admitting it. We're going to reverse it.